Hi, Jonathan here. We made a mistake with the audio recording on this one, which we hope you'll have patience with and can overlook. Please enjoy this conversation with Jeppe Nørregaard.
Say welcome. Yeah, thank you. How are you doing today?
I'm very good. Thanks for having me. Yeah.
Of course, I've been looking forward to having this
Yeah, you too.
talk.
Yeah.
I wanted to start by asking you about InReality.
Mm-hmm.
You are on a mission.
Yes.
What is your mission?
We want to guarantee real digital content. And by real, say an image. A real image to us is a photo taken by a camera chip that hasn't been manipulated, that represents reality, that represents what that camera chip saw. And so it's very much about avoiding digital manipulation, photoshopping or modern AI or even deepfakes, which are entirely made up. So we want to guarantee real content so that you can trust the photos you see online.
Okay. How does that work?
Yeah. So it's the classic methods for defending against malicious content is to detect it with AI. So this is what I worked with for quite a few years. So it's like a detect and delete approach. So we detect misinformation or manipulated content, and then we remove it or warn people of it. That's what we do today. A lot of companies do this. I don't believe that this is a very sort of future-proof approach. Generative AI is getting very, very good. Detecting misinformation hasn't been particularly successful for the last 10 years. So we're trying to flip this around, and we're saying, instead of detecting malicious content, we want to safeguard real content. We want to make a little ring fence around a corner of the internet, and everything in there is real, guaranteed to be real, and everything outside is the same as it is today. Maybe real, maybe Photoshop, maybe deepfake, whatever.
Okay, that's super interesting. So if I have an image,
Yes.
your software can tell me if it has been photoshopped or AI manipulated or is a deepfake or actually represents what I took a picture of from the beginning.
Unfortunately, no. So this is what we call the oracle. Everyone would like to have the oracle where you can ask, I have this photo, I didn't take it, don't know where it came from. Is this real or not? That's the approach we attempt today, but it is extremely difficult. So it used to be that we could count fingers and be like, are the eyes in the right place and these things? We call this artifacts. So issues or sort of mistakes that the AI has made. I'm assuming here we're talking about AI generated images or manipulated images. Today, they're getting so good that we can't really see it. At least some images are so good that humans can't see it. So instead, we have other AI algorithms that try to detect artifacts. And they are small pixel mistakes in the photo that seems manipulated. And there are fairly big companies that specialize in that. The issue is that we don't know if those artifacts are going to stay there. I don't know if we can sort of be confident that there will be artifacts. Generative AI is getting very, very good. There's billions of dollars in making the best generative AI. Also, we have the issue that if there ever is photos that we can't detect, then we won't know because we can't detect it. So if anyone has made content that is so good that we don't know if it was real or not, then we probably haven't realized it because we can't find them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. But surely you talk of artifacts. Sometimes AI can see stuff that we can't see.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Couldn't you just, it sounds like an arms race.
It is. That's exactly what it is. Yeah.
Couldn't you just argue that the AI detecting fakes will also get better and find, new artifacts or new thing, maybe not even artifacts.
Absolutely. Yeah. So this is exactly what's happening right now. So we have an arms race between detection and generation that sort of keeps going. But detection has always struggled, and there's a lot of reasons we can dive into that. But it's an arms race between these two sides. What exactly would I want to say? So I think one of the first issues is that detection tends to be behind. So when there is a new wave of generative AI, we need to upgrade our detection algorithms to find them, which leaves a gap where we can no longer really trust content. So if a brand new generative AI algorithm is published by a company that isn't helping out on the detection side, then they can maybe create images that our detectors right now can't find. And then we need to upgrade them in this arms race to be able to detect this new algorithm. So it goes forth and back, and we keep having this uncertainty that we don't know if we're able to detect the newest generative manipulated content. There's another weird issue that is modern generative AI algorithms are often trained in what's called sort of like GAN setup, generative adversarial network setup. And it's a setup where you train the generator against a detector. And it means in order to become as good as possible, it has to fool the detector into believing that everything it produces is real. So that's how we train them. We train them against detectors. So you could argue that when we have better detectors, to some extent, we'll get better generators. And right now, there's really, really a lot of money in making the best generators. That's where the business case seems to be. So it's a struggle to be able to make good detectors that can keep up.
But hasn't this always been the case, though? Like, there's this picture that I saw of, it's from World War II. It's a Soviet propaganda picture of a soldier wearing like 4 wristwatches that he took from dead German soldiers or civilians.
All right.
And they photoshopped, I said in air quotes, I mean, they brushed it up.
Yeah.
And it looks real.
Yeah.
I mean,
it has always been the case. And I think Photoshop, to some extent, has been sort of part of the problem in the sense that Photoshopping has been almost synonymous with manipulating content, even though there's a lot of usage of Photoshop, just preparing your photos, what you're using for. But Photoshopping has been the term for manipulating your photo with a funny hat or removing a person or something more dubious. So it's always been a problem. The only difference is really the speed and so how easy it is today. That at least 5 years ago, you needed someone who's very good at photoshopping to make something that was very realistic looking. We've all seen bad Photoshop. I think the issue today is that you don't need any particular skill set, and you could do them in very large amounts. It doesn't take you any time at all. You could just ask a generative AI to fix the problem for you. You can do it at large scale. You can probably script it so that you push out an image every couple of minutes if you want to. So it's cheap, fast, and easy. So it's the same problem as always, but just more of it.
So it's scale.
Yeah.
Super interesting. I actually thought that we would take a step back, Jeppe. And I want to know about you.
Oh,
Where you come from and
all right.
what you've done. I mean, you're running this company now on
Yeah. So I did my studies at DTU, where I also did a PhD, and then did a postdoc at ITU. And all my research have been in machine learning, AI, and natural language processing, so natural language is just English, Spanish, it's the human languages. So I've specialized in how to process these languages with AI. And my focus has always been misinformation. That was my interest in college. So that's why I went into NLP, natural language processing. It was specifically for that problem. So on my PhD, I worked with some algorithmic approaches or sort of algorithmic updates. But then I also worked with an American group on mostly creating data sets for the problem so that other groups can analyze or can try to detect and it was mostly news. So I've always worked in this space of how do we handle misinformation. That's really been my passion for my entire career. And while I did that, I sat next to the guys who did deepfakes. Back then, they weren't as great, but while I was trying to detect misinformation, I sat next to the guys who could then, make a deepfake of Barack Obama or Donald Trump back then. So I kind of saw that coming. I think a lot of researchers did. And misinformation detection was already next to impossible. I mean, fake news became, a hype term in 2016. It's been a huge problem. And so I think detection was already an issue. I could kind of see where this was going with deepfakes, and that was what got me interested in completely changing our approach to this problem, not doing detection anymore, and then see if we can do something that's hopefully much better.
Why misinformation? Where did this come from?
I think it's some frustration with politicians, with sort of debates where people lie or say something that's vaguely maybe true, and or just outright lie in a debate with other people, and we have to figure out who was right and who was wrong, and they throw rumors at each other. And I really think that our democracies are really, really, really important. I really want to protect democracies and really passionate about democracies. And I think misinformation is perhaps the biggest problem for democracies, in my opinion. That we can't figure out what's true, what's right or wrong anymore. We don't know if the people we vote for are right or are wrong or are lying. So I think that initially just frustrated me, and I think maybe later frightened me. And that's why I always work with that.
Why do you think misinformation is the biggest threat to democracy? Because you could argue that people can say whatever they want, and they
absolutely, yeah. So it's definitely not about. So this is also one of the reasons why misinformation is such a weird or difficult problem. Is that the definition is very difficult, because you're allowed to have your own opinion. I'm very sort of pro free speech and our own rights and all this. So you're allowed to say what you want, and you are allowed to lie in our society. We don't have laws against that, I think, unless like some extreme cases. But at the same time, I think we live in a time where people are less trusting of each other, more polarized. It's us versus them, and this is, I think, boosted by lies or propaganda, and the sort of the chaos of especially social networks. So to me, that's the sort of the chaos of the way that we communicate is, in my opinion, a biggest threat to our democracy. We have other big problems, I will say, but just like when it comes to our way of governing our countries, I think, in my opinion, that's our biggest issue.
How big is it, in your opinion?
How big?
How big is the problem of misinformation?
I don't know. I don't know how to even give a number, but I think there are serious debates about whether some elections would have turned out differently if not for misinformation, or for that matter, advanced sort of tools used usually via social networks to move elections. So, for example, the Brexit election is a famous example where there's some doubt on like how much was true, how much was lie, and like was it even sort of well informed, and then about that decision. But there are elections where we seriously consider whether technology and a few people using technology efficiently moved an election. And those technologies have only gotten way more advanced since then. So that's pretty frightening, I think. I think we should sort of protect our model of everyone having sort of a somewhat equal say. So I don't know how big, but I think it's sort of ever growing at the moment because of the very cool and interesting new technologies that unfortunately can also be used for some shady things.
Do you think the truth is special? So this is a bit of a weird one. I've been thinking a lot about this lately, actually. Yeah. People talk about a post-truth society, where it's irrelevant. The word truth doesn't make sense anymore.
Yeah.
And this is a kind of, I guess, postmodern take on things.
Yeah.
But it's basically, I mean, the idea is that your truth can be different from my truth.
Yeah.
Do you think that there is I don't want to say absolute truth, but do you think that there is a truth, and do you think that it is special? Like,
I think there's, in some sense, I think there's two answers to it. But I lean to the same side on both of them. So yeah, I think there has to be events or things that we can discuss in terms of factualness that we can sort of measure. So the work that we do right now is basically to protect whatever our sensors observe, and we sort of use that as a grounded, objective view on reality. And then you can have a broken sensor, and you can have, all kinds of other issues. But conceptually, we want to try to sort of measure reality and be like, this is what we saw with this sensor. And I think that should be sort of unquestionable, at least if tech is working as we want it to. And then I hope that we can sort of move the concept that we might have very different views on things to being opinions, which is fair enough. And I think we should be respectful of opinions. And I don't believe that we will ever agree on everything. That's not the goal. If we can just sort of accept some facts and then keep debating our opinions, I think that's how society works best. So I think fundamentally, yes, I do think that we should have a special corner for truth. I also think the other side is, I think it's also the best way to approach life. That I think if we completely give up on factual information, then I think our societies will just sort of collapse. So I think it's even if there's a philosophical discussion that we can keep having, I still think in our everyday life and in our debates of politics, I think it's the best to sort of assume that we have some known information and then we can ground that as opinions.
Yeah. I guess there's also an argument to be made for, so that there's kind of two things I can see here. We have to agree on something.
Yeah.
And that something could be the truth.
Yeah.
But sometimes, some people would argue that the truth is not necessarily the best, let's say, story to believe in.
Yeah.
You give a very scientific, very grounded response to this, what our sensors measure.
Yeah.
But I guess some people could argue that it's better to have a cohesive story that is not necessarily true.
Yeah.
Other than this kind of mishmash where, different people measure different things. And
yeah. I'm very pro information being available to anyone who wants it. So I think there is situations where we simplify, and as scientists, we should simplify because otherwise people will never understand our work. We do have to sort of say, what is the overall conclusion of this work, even if there are details that are difficult to explain. So I think that's the reason where you have to simplify. And now we're talking a lot about sort of politics and misinformation. I think politicians almost always simplify because they have to have a simple message that their voters can believe in. So there's also some strategy in that. So I just want the details to be available so that if someone is oversimplifying or just outright lying about the details, then we have them. And then it might only be the passionate people or the experts that go into those details. So, but I think it should be available, if that makes sense.
Do you think social networks have been a net positive or a net negative on the world? So obviously, I mean, I can tell that, these new advanced technologies, obviously, they bring a lot of good to the world.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they've spread misinformation. And
I think, so for example, with AI, I use AI a whole bunch. I think there's so many cool things that AI can do. I just happen to be interested in one of the sectors where it can also do a lot of damage. And I want to make sure that we don't misuse the technology. And I think it's the same thing with social networks. I think there's a ton of good things, but there's also the misuse. I'm not particularly happy with the management of the world's social networks. I think a relatively small group of people, so Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, these famous tech entrepreneurs, have had a very, very large say and not necessarily made great decisions with their social networks. I believe it could have been done a lot better. I might be wrong. I haven't sit in their shoes, but I don't think they've made the best decisions. So I would love to see either those networks change or alternative networks, like a second wave of networks that work better for sort of humanity. And I think we all like the idea that we can keep each other posted and contact each other. But yeah, I think there's a lot of other things that could do better.
I mean, running a company, obviously you have to balance mechanics.
Yeah.
You can have grand ideals. I think that I would imagine that Mark Zuckerberg and Jeff Bezos started that way. But then you also have the issue of profit.
Yeah. So I think I haven't met these people. I don't really know. I think a guy like Elon Musk seems to be an idealist. I think it's more question of like, what is his ideals, right? And that's where we get into an area of opinions where I think it's just a little bit too risky to have very few individuals' opinions be the rule of law. So I think it would have been better if more opinions had been involved. And it's not really to blame them necessarily, but I think the tech world has been very dominated by Silicon Valley, by a sort of a culture that comes from there and maybe some other hotspots. So I think they follow that community's ideals, and that might just not fit very well with the rest of the US and Europe and South America and all the other continents, right? So I think, maybe it's not that they necessarily weren't idealists. I just think that we need to figure out what is the ideal way to run these networks. I think from Europe, at least now, there's a lot of opinions about, at least a lot of people who doesn't like the state of the social network world.
What do you think is going to happen in the future? Do you think that the status quo is going to stay? I mean, we see a whole new wave of, European startups now and Silicon Valhalla. And do you think that we're going to see a different future in 10 years? It's not as dominated by big tech in California.
I very much hope so. So I think there's a lot of issues with having a small area or small group of people have the say. So technologies have become extremely dominating, right? The tech industry is just very dominating for what happens in the world. And it's been sort of, run by a community. So it's not single individuals, but it's just sort of a culture. I think right now, with the tensions arising between the US and Europe, I think a lot of Europeans hope that we'll have our counter, that not necessarily to outcompete Silicon Valley, but just to have a little bit of say on scale how we run things, that there's like a tech sector in Europe that maybe proposes alternative social networks that work differently. So I hope we see a different balance of these things. I don't know. I mean, so if you 10 years ago said someone was going to make a social network with dance videos, people will probably say that that's YouTube. Why wouldn't people put it on YouTube? And then TikTok came and completely took over the world. So that's probably the tricky thing, is that the social, if there's a new social network, it's probably going to be something that goes viral that we didn't expect to go viral. So maybe, but it is it's going to be tough to really have an alternative, I think. There's also ideas about building social networks that aren't companies per se, that are either non-profit or like state-run or European-run. And I think Europe has a tendency to be slightly bureaucratic. I don't know if I'm seeing, the tech speed of such an organization that can really keep up with the American tech sector, but who knows?
No, I mean, it was done with radio and TV.
Yeah.
In the past.
Yeah. But it's true. Was there an American alternative?
Not at the time, no.
Yeah, that's why I couldn't get that.
I couldn't get American TV channels.
So if they end up illegalizing Meta, right, then there's a pretty open market. But we're also in Denmark, right? In Denmark, people are extremely overly using Messenger. In a lot of European countries, it's more commonly WhatsApp. I think Denmark is very heavily using Facebook for some reason. Of course, WhatsApp is now owned by Meta as well, so that's tough. But yeah, I think it's going to be pretty tricky to get into that market unless some regulation changes it or, yeah. I mean, I think there's been discussions in the US about breaking up some of the giants because they also think that they are too powerful. So that can also change things completely, of course.
There's strong network effects to think about.
Yeah.
So you're running InReality and have to contend with these network effects. How do you go about that? I mean, do you have any competition that you need to?
Yeah, we do. So I don't know how much of the details we've actually gone with this, but what we're building is a cryptographic way of defending realities. We want to certify real content at the sensor, and we want to basically defend its travels across the internet until it appears on your screen. And there's a whole lot of details in that, but essentially we would like to be able to provide your phone with a very efficient cryptographic proof that this image was taken on a photographic sensor on this device. Maybe it's been scaled down, maybe the brightness has been changed, but it hasn't been manipulated. And so there's a lot of details in how we secure that journey, but that's the goal. There are companies that work with these approaches as well. There's a lot of stuff happening in hardware, which as far as we can tell is really great for us as well, because we work on the network layer. How do we apply this to the internet so we can use a lot of these new upgrades in hardware? It's so Qualcomm, which makes chips for a lot of Android devices, have made some new cool updates that some phones from 24 and 25 have. And I know that some professional, fairly expensive cameras now also have methods where they basically cryptographically sign content in their cameras. This came from a Canon camera, with this serial number. So they sort of, recognize that photo was taken by this device. So that's what we want to use and want to sort of push to the internet. When it comes to the internet, there are competitors. They do it very differently. They are mostly blockchain based. We have a completely different way of doing this fundamentally, which is what we're attempting to sort of build and put into production and showcase and see if it sort of has interests. So we work in a tech space where there are competitors, but there's no one doing it our way. So if we are right with our hypothesis that this is a better way to do it, then I think we have a really strong position. But of course, that's what we're working on, and we'll be working on for the coming years.
Did I answer your question? That's something. So what are the trade-offs with using blockchain?
So blockchains and Web3 is also a very fast-moving space. There's a bunch of cool startups, and even the last chain is doing all kinds of cool things. So it is a tricky place to be completely certain about like what are all the other people doing. There are brilliant people doing other things. What we focus on is very much scalability. So if this appears on smartphones as it is now on some very new Android phones and on cameras, and all people, or at least a lot of people, have these devices, then there'll be into a future where billions of devices will be creating this new type of secure content. So scale is really of an issue. There will be billions of updates to social networks or to news networks or messages sent to you and others every day. So it's very much about scale and cost, of course, because if you had to pay for every single post you put on a social network, then you're not going to be there. There's some other aspects. So blockchains have this phenomenon that if you put something into a blockchain, you can't remove it. We are working with a system where we can remove things in a different way. So we would say it's more applicable to, for example, a social network where you would like to be able to delete your account one day and not have a trace of everything silly you've done in your youth on that network. So it's several different things. To some extent, it's about specializing for this problem. So the blockchains today do all kinds of things, especially transactions. There isn't a whole lot of blockchains that don't have some aspect of a token in there. And we believe that we can basically specialize for the other problem by leaving that tokenomics side and then be more efficient at what we want to do, which is just prove content from devices.
So scale, deletability,
Yeah.
and cost with the token there. Those would be the main three drawbacks of using blockchain technology.
Yeah. As far as we can tell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's another aspect to it though, because I mean, blockchains, at least people like to talk about them as decentralized.
Yeah.
It's hard to maybe run a blockchain as a company. I mean, you can.
Yeah. So there are companies running sort of private blockchains or public-private blockchains. This is also where it gets really murky, and where I think you almost case by case has to sort of compare you with the others to really understand if like what their trade-offs are, because there's a little bit of anarchy in that space. People do all kinds of things and just sort of throw it up there to see if it works or not, which is very, very cool. It's also a little bit tricky to analyze. So what we do is what we call a hyper-decentralized approach. So we would like the security of decentralization. That's the goal. We want the same security that nobody can break, not the tech giants, not a government, and not a hacker or individual. We want that level of security with the efficiency that comes with modern servers that already run all of the internet. So we're trying to make a hybrid between these two things so that we could potentially go directly to a large network and say, you can run this out of the box on your huge network, and it's not going to throttle, it's going to be fast enough, it's going to be cheap enough, and you're going to have these advantages. So we're mixing the two approaches in some sense.
So some of it happens on edge.
Exactly. So we would like to involve all of your smartphones basically in this sort of dance between the servers or the networks or wherever we want to have guaranteed real content and all the users, viewers, posters that use that network. So let's say it was Facebook. Basically, we have like collaboration between all Facebook users and Facebook. And that collaboration give us this network security so that not even Facebook can manipulate it. Nobody can really manipulate anything about the data that's in the network. But it's super efficient, and we can utilize that they have a massive server that can do all kinds of processing for us to make it faster.
Would we have to trust Facebook in this case?
The goal is no. So the goal for us is that this code and this algorithm, this system is open so that all experts in security and cryptography can inspect and say, this is actually running this security and nobody can manipulate it. And all Facebook can really do is to press play and run it within their own systems. So that's the goal. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. What about me as the end user?
Yeah.
If now Facebook says, I mean, all they have to do is press play.
Yeah.
And I see a picture.
Yeah.
Can I know that it's been verified, let's say, with this cryptographic method?
Yeah. So you're touching on a really, really tricky topic. So the technology itself will make it possible for your phone to verify the data. That's part of the concept. It's not Facebook giving it a funny label. It's actually your phone doing the cryptographic processing chain. Yes, this did indeed come from that camera chip across the planet. So your phone can individually verify everything about this data. That's the goal. When it comes to the end user, of course, there's always this issue that we can't expect people to understand these technologies, and I wouldn't require them to, because it's super complicated. The same with AI, the same with our terms of service that we all press agree to, and the same with all the privacy policies. So there is an issue that people don't necessarily understand what is behind all this technology. There already is. And I'm not sure we have the solution for how to solve that, but we're going to try to make it understandable. And then we're hoping that many groups will want to use the technology so that users may see sort of a friendly face when they see that verification elsewhere, that they sort of know that technology. Just like in Denmark, it would be MitID, or so that you sort of know that, okay, I've seen this before. This is the security that makes sure that what I see is real. But it is tricky, and we are actively working with this. How do we take this very advanced technology that is supposed to defend people against this other very advanced technology and make it somewhat understandable? So if you have good ideas, please let me.
I had a question for you. Do you think that the government should be involved in this? Do you think that it's part of the responsibility of the government to protect its citizens against misinformation?
So we've had some interesting chats with a couple of people. We have had meetings with some lawmakers who find an interest in this project, and it's been really nice to have this chat about it. I think the issue for us is that we're a startup. It's relatively fast paced. We don't have infinite runway. We need to figure out how do we fit in the landscape that is here now. I personally, with very little experience in lawmaking, I don't know how regulators can sort of help us in a short term. So I think for us right now, we're mostly talking with lawmakers just to sort of keep a conversation. Maybe they will know about what could be done in the future. But I would love to see laws that require more verification online. So there's an interesting example right now. So the European has a law now that I believe they have one right now that you have to mark AI content on social networks. I'm actually not completely sure where it started. I think maybe the Norway had it first, but anyway. There's now a movement that you have to mark AI content when you visit social networks. That's kind of the other way that what we're doing, right? We want to mark reality. They want to mark AI content. I think the issue is that it's, as far as I know, voluntary, right? You mark your content as AI, which means that if you are doing something malicious, you're probably not going to do that. So that is a law that is attempting to help. I don't think it's very future-proof. I think it's going to be way too easy to create content that we don't know if it's real or not, and then just take it off as real and send it up there. Which is why we flip the problem around and say, let's safeguard real content. But if they already have made a law for having AI being checked or having uploaders having to sort of notify that they're using AI, then they might be interested in the other way around, that you have to check reality or you have to check non-reality. So I would love to see regulations on this. I have no idea how that massive machine works, especially the European one. I don't know how long that would take, but I would love to participate.
Is it possible to protect 100% against misinformation? So the reason I'm asking this is I like low-tech solutions to things. And obviously you can prove that a picture was taken by a camera. And you can prove with cryptography that this is what the camera saw. But you could take a picture of a picture. I mean, that's always a very okay solution.
So so misinformation is a very broad thing, right? And you can't defend that against that because you can just lie, right? I can just sit down and say something that's just a lie, which is allowed. So you can't defend against that. What we're trying to defend against is digital manipulation that makes those lies way more efficient. Right? That's what we're trying to help with. So we sort of go back to an older time where you could just lie when you don't have any evidence. Today, people seem to have evidence that isn't evidence because they have manipulated it because we can't trust it anymore. So fundamentally, no, that's really tricky. With respect to taking a photo of a photo, there is technologies that help us there. So I have to see if I remember. I think it's Nikon right now that has a camera where they did sort of a showcase of this, where basically they just save depth data at the same time. So if I take a photo of you, it's the photo, but it's also the depth data. And that means I can't have a photo of you anymore. Now I need a sculpture of you or a lookalike or a mask or something in order to do the same thing. I know that Face ID on Apple isn't the camera. It's like a grid sensor that measures depth as well. LiDAR. Okay, yeah, there we go. So they can also, at least with the front camera, do the same thing. If you take a selfie, they could say both. I don't know if they're doing it, but I would love to see them do that so that they say the LiDAR data and the image data, so you can't take a photo. And of course, the same thing with the back camera. So there are methods that help us a lot here, and the So Nikon, as I mentioned, did a case specifically about this photo of a photo problem. So luckily there's methods against this. Of course, in the end, you could find a lookalike and you could make a video that seemingly looked like you doing something, and then it just happened to be another person. But then we're back to old-fashioned manipulation, and we've avoided the problem of digital manipulation, which is so much more efficient and cheap and powerful.
So you can't, obviously you can't protect 100%. What about open source? Do you have any thoughts on open sourcing the technology?
Yes. So first of all, I really like open source. I use Ubuntu. I use a bunch of open source myself. So I hope to participate in that community as much as I can. I also think when it comes to security, cybersecurity, I think open source is the way to go. The most secure systems in the world are the ones where all security specialists help each other in finding holes and closing them. So that includes researchers in universities. So if a researcher at uni finds a way to hack into the Linux kernel, then they'll publish a paper, hopefully notify Linux first, and then they'll publish a paper and it'll make them famous within their field. So there's a huge effort to close any possible gap in these open source systems. So I'm very pro making it open source. And I think if we want to be trustworthy and transparent, then I think we have to be open source. So that's basically the main stand, that we're going to be open source. Of course, I'm also currently trying to figure out how to make a business case out of this. So we're also trying to find out what part of this system do we sort of keep for our own business. And currently I don't exactly know the answer, but that's what we're trying to figure out. But I'm not sure it's even possible to do what we do without making it open source.
I mean, OpenAI famously was also open source.
Yeah,
for a while.
Yeah. And now they're called OpenAI.
Yes.
And they are not open, they're closed AI.
Yeah.
Facebook, or Facebook AI Fair, is famously open source on their YAML models, so you can download them and run them. It's been a while now, so I haven't tried it, but I ran one on my laptop, and it was slow, but it worked, and you could have your own chat with a machine that runs on your computer. And I even think they have a really impressive license where you're allowed, I think, so don't get sued because of me, but I think you're allowed to use it commercially as long as you're of a certain size. So I think they are definitely pushing a completely different strategy than OpenAI, which I'm very fond of. So, hold on. Yeah.
Misconceptions. Are there any big misconceptions when it comes to misinformation or your solution or?
So I think the misconception, in my opinion, that too many people have, even professionals, is that we can just detect. That's the main stand. We'll just, have an AI detect if this is real or not. And unfortunately, I don't think that's work. Luckily, people that I talk with have sort of increasingly being aware that this is a huge problem. And I think the misconception is because detection is so super hard. So even if you can, in a lab, have your AI detect 98% of the content generated by the current version of the generative model. That's how you would set up the experiment, right? You would say, I've made a new super advanced cool detection algorithm. I now make a data set of real photos and fake photos or manipulated photos from the most advanced generative AI algorithm. And then I test how well it runs. And then it, has 98%. It's 98% correct. And then you publish a paper on that, or you say, hey, look at how great we are, and you make a business on it, and you can pay to have your photo checked. The issues with that approach is, first of all, what is the 2%? So is the 2% the most real-looking photos? Because then that's also the photos that will work with people, right? That people will believe in. So you've most likely just detected the best photos. And of course, if I was malicious, what I would do is I would create 1,000 versions of what I wanted to push, and then I would run the best detector I have available and find the 2% it doesn't find, and those are the photos I would use. So there's a lot of ways to sort of abuse that system. And then there's the other issues of what about next year's model? Like, how quickly can you update? can you run this at scale? So there's the large networks today have hundreds of millions of posts a day, collectively billions. Do we expect to run that on all these, say, photos? And I think the weird issue here is that people pay a fair amount of money for generative AI right now. You pay a sort of surprising amount of money for relatively little content. There's very few parts of the internet that you pay this much for generating some images. But you don't pay anything for your post on Facebook. So they have to have something super duper cheap that can handle hundreds of millions of posts. And they are up against the algorithm that you pay quite a bit of money for, that there are billions of investments in. Those are at least some of the difficulties with the detection. So in my opinion, the misconception that I see with the people that I talk with or discuss with is that they still believe that this is not a problem. It's not going to be a problem. We'll just detect. I don't think that this has ever really worked. I don't think it will work.
What about text? Can you safeguard your text?
Text is a little bit funny because what is real text, right? So there's text that I've written down like on pen. Then there's text that I've typed on a keyboard on a thing, right? So there's maybe kind of real because I swiped it or whatever I did, but I could also have my voice translated to text, then still my text. And then of course I could have a speech writer. I could ask ChatGPT, help me write this speech, then it's still my speech. I might actually be doing the speech, but I had someone help me write it. So I think text is a little bit weirder. I think the most important thing about text is basically to have individuals stand by the text. So I say, this is my speech. ChatGPT maybe help me make it, but it's my speech and I'm sort of responsible for what's in there. So if I'm hugely misinforming people or sort of, saying all kind of crude things about other people that isn't true, that I'm to blame because this is mine. So I think with text, it's more about who's responsible because real text is sort of a weird thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's actually, now that I think about it, it's really hard to say, right? I mean, as long as I stand by something, does it really matter who wrote the thing?
Yeah.
Like, even politicians have, speech writers.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah.
They are the ones saying it, so surely they need to be held accountable for it.
And in a sense, that's what I kind of want. I think it's okay to have help with your speech. I just want someone to be accountable again. And I think especially with powerful people, I think they should be accountable. I actually think there's a really interesting case right now. So Donald Trump had a speech the other day. I believe it is a speech he had after the murder of Kirk, I think. There was a speech where there was discussion about whether it was a deep fake or whether there was have you seen this?
Yes.
Yes, I saw. Yeah. And then there was a bunch of people analyzing it. Some said, yes, it was deep fake involved. And then some people said, no, it wasn't. And I think Fareed, which is an expert in the US, which is probably the leading expert in that field, as far as I know, his latest conclusion was that audio is seemingly real and his mouth is seemingly real. And the clips that there was with his hands, probably because they've stitched together two videos. So as far as I can tell from his analysis, it is actually done from
Semi-real, at least.
Yeah, or cut together, right? So if you can call that manipulative, of course, but as far as I can tell, it should be all right. But I think the discussion is interesting because people actually don't know. We don't know. It could take quite a long time, and people probably still don't know. Like, did Donald Trump actually post a fake interview video of himself? And people are still in doubt. And I think in the future, we're just going to be more and more in doubt. So even if he does push something real, we might not trust it. And vice versa. If you post something fake, we might think it's real. So it's gotten super blurry, which is sort of the problem with the 98% detection, because we're really completely sure. And I think there is a big potential for politicians to be able to publish videos of themselves that aren't real, because it can make their social media campaigns way easier and faster and cheaper. So it's of course a tool that they might want to use. I think it's sort of up to the public to say you shouldn't use it if we think they shouldn't use it. So I know there's an influencer who has like 160,000 followers, who doesn't exist. It's an AI. She takes photo of different places. Takes in quotation marks if you only hear you. Yeah, so like there'll be a photo of her posing somewhere and like a famous tourist destination or something, but the person doesn't exist. She's called Mia something. And I think it's fairly open. They're open to like this is an AI. But of course, if you can have an influencer with a lot of followers, you can very easily have a political influencer with a lot of followers, which doesn't exist, which is just other people creating a fake persona that fits their ideals or their propaganda. So I think that's really, really problematic. I think Donald Trump's video showcases that we don't actually really know what's going on anymore with the videos that are posted even from the official channels of the White House.
Yeah, and I guess the problem really starts when you don't know. I mean, if you have an AI influencer and you're open about the fact that it's made by AI, it's different than, if Donald Trump posts this and says, I'm not going to tell you if this is fake or not.
Yeah.
It might be real, this might be fake.
Yeah, absolutely. So that company, I don't know if it says in her bio, but I think it's, if you look into it, they are sort of open about it. This is just a fake human being. So they follow the guidelines that Europe now has with, like, you have to say if it's AI. They follow that. But you could, ask the question, if someone very, very wealthy asked them, can you make us an individual and not say it's AI? Are they going to say yes or no to that deal? Because obviously that could be a very big business opportunity for them. And of course, is there another group elsewhere that is just as good as them, as making a fake persona with whatever intentions they have? So,
Yeah.
yeah.
But you're running InReality. It's a quite technical product using cryptography to protect against fake misinformation. If you had to say one tip to our audience about running a tech company this size,
Yeah.
do you have any thoughts?
So the first thing is have awesome co-founders, because I am running it with two co-founders, Les and Alicia, and they're awesome. I think we're still early, so I feel I'm not in a position to really give good advice, but I can say that if you are a tech startup, then there's a lot of boxes you don't fit into that other startups fit into. So you have to be really aware of where you spend your time, and this is with respect to customers or brands or investments or accelerators, that there's just a lot of buckets that other startups can benefit from that you can't benefit from because you are a different type of startup. And I'm not sure we realized this early enough. So I think we did spend some time trying to fit into other people's ideas of what the correct startup structure is. And maybe that wasn't the right strategy, because we were never going to fit into that box anyway. At least that's my opinion now. So let's see if I'm right or wrong about it.
Yes. So you just have to realize that, and tell people that you don't.
Yeah. So, I mean, of course, you can also, first of all, look into what are these grants, investments, like what are they for? And then, be really honest about like these are the problems that we have. This is why we need a grant or an investment. This is why it's difficult to get to a customer. This is a vision, and really make sure that storyline makes sense for your technology, and just face the fact that a lot of, for example, VCs are gonna say no straight away because you don't fit at all into their idea and into their business model, which is totally fair. I just think that maybe we spend too much time trying to fit into those buckets, even though we might never fit into those buckets. And I think now we're better at sort of knowing where our place is, which makes us more efficient when we go and talk to people, and which includes everything from customers to investors.
Yeah, but we talked about misinformation, the problem of misinformation. Your company InReality, blockchains,
Good.
type of things. Yeah. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you feel that we probably should touch upon?
That's a very open question.
You can say anything you want.
No. But I don't know. Actually, you had a lot of questions. Yeah. It was a nice chat.
Yeah. No, that's okay. That's okay. If people want to keep up with you or InReality,
Yeah.
where should they go?
I think LinkedIn is probably the most almost active space where you can follow InReality or me on like co-founders. And then at some point we'll probably also have a better website.
Isn't that the truth? I think we all say that.
Yeah. And when you do startups, you do everything with very few people, even things that you're not necessarily very good at, including making websites. So yeah,
Let's work a little bit on that.
I think LinkedIn is the best place to find us.
Okay, now super. Then I want to say thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, and good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ja,
Be cool.
fik det så hurtigt. Sådan. Godt.
Yeah.